영어 동화 세상 리틀팍스.
The Swiss Family Robinson, Chapter 1, The Shipwreck. For 7 days our ship had been tossed at sea. The broken masts had gone overboard. Leaks had sprung everywhere and the water was rising rapidly as the raging storm grew stronger. My wife, Elizabeth, gathered our 4 young sons around her in our cabin. She was encouraging them with calm and loving words. This was not the scene we had pictured when we set out from Switzerland to establish a new colony. Amid the roar of the thundering waves, I suddenly heard a seaman cry,
"Land! Land!"
At the same instant, the ship struck something with a jolt that threw everyone to the deck of the cabin. Above the dreadful sounds of the ship breaking up, I heard the captain shout,
"Lower the lifeboats! Abandon ship!"
"Abandon ship!" I exclaimed. The words went like a dagger through my heart. But seeing my children's terror, I hid my own fear. "Take courage, my boys," I cried. "We're all still above water. There is land nearby. Let's do our best to reach it." With that, I went up on deck. Imagine my horror when I saw all the lifeboats out on the water. The crew had abandoned us. But as I looked around in despair, I realized that our situation was not hopeless. Although the bow of the ship had been destroyed, our cabin remained unbroken in the stern. I could just make out some land through the rain. I returned to my family and forced a smile. If the wind and waves die down tomorrow, we can go ashore.
Then we must find food,
Said my wife.
We'll need all our strength tomorrow.
After a good supper, the 3 youngest boys, Ernest, 13, Jack, 11, and Franz, 8, were soon asleep. But at 15, Fritz was old enough to understand the danger and to stay up with us.
"Father, you and I can swim,
He said,
but don't you think we should make life preservers for Mother and the boys?"
"An excellent idea," I told Fritz. "Let's make some right now in case we need to escape the ship during the night." We searched the ship and soon got hold of enough empty flasks and canisters. Connecting them together, we made life preservers, which we all quickly put on. Fritz and his brothers now slept soundly while Elizabeth and I kept watch all night. The next morning, we gathered on the remaining portion of the deck.
Where are the sailors?
Asked my youngest son, Franz.
Have they taken away all the boats?
Asked Jack. I nodded gravely.
The sea will soon be calm enough for swimming.
Fritz reassured his younger brothers.
"That's fine for you and Father,"
Exclaimed Ernest.
"but think of Mother and the rest of us. Why not build a raft so we can all go ashore together?"
It would be difficult to build a raft that would carry us safely, I said. But let's think about that while we explore the ship to see what might be of use to us. While I checked on the food and water, my wife took Franz to help her feed the animals on board. Jack went to the captain's cabin. When he opened the door, out sprang 2 large but friendly dogs. Back in our cabin, we displayed our treasures. Fritz brought a couple of guns, powder flasks, and plenty of bullets. Ernest had nails, a saw, and a hammer, while other tools stuck out of his pockets.
Look at these nice sharp hooks.
Said little Franz, proudly showing us a box of fishhooks. "Well done, Franz," I said. "Those may save our lives by keeping us fed,"
I have some good news.
said my dear wife.
Some useful animals are still alive. A cow, a donkey, 2 goats, 6 sheep, and a fine pig.
"Now we just have to figure out how to get ashore," I said.
Can't we each get into a big tub and float there?
Said Jack.
I've often sailed like that around the pond at home.
"A splendid idea," I said. We soon found 4 tall wooden casks floating in the hold. After dragging them on deck, we managed, with some difficulty, to saw them in half. I was proud of our work, but my wife looked in dismay at the 8 tubs.
I'll never get into one of those.
she declared. Just wait, I said. I arranged my tubs in a row, connecting them with planks along the bottom and sides. When I finished, I was confident our boat would be perfectly safe in smooth water. There was only one problem. Our boat was so heavy that we couldn't move it an inch. The Swiss Family Robinson, Chapter 2, Going Ashore. How could we move that heavy boat? I stood on the deck looking at the wreckage around us. We need a lever and rollers, I cried. Fetch me a sturdy wooden plank for a lever. We can make rollers from what's left of a mast. Fritz quickly brought a plank and I cut up a mast. Then I raised the bow of our boat with the plank while my sons placed a roller under it. We repeated the process, placing 2 more rollers under the boat. When we once again began to push, we were able to launch our boat into the water. Now, my beloved family, I announced, it's time to make our escape. Leave plenty of food near the animals. Then collect everything that may be of use to us. The boys joyfully obeyed me. From the large quantity of things they gathered, I chose canvas for a tent, a chest of carpenter's tools, fishing rods, an iron pot, cases of biscuits and dried soup, and some other items. We now began to take our seats, each one of us in our own tub. Just then we heard the roosters crowing as if scolding us for abandoning them.
Let's take them with us,
urged my wife. So we placed 10 hens and a couple of roosters in one tub with some wire netting over the top. The ducks and geese took to the water at once, while the pigeons swiftly flew toward shore.
This is my contribution,
said my wife, throwing a mysterious bag to Franz. All being ready, we cast off and moved away from the wreck. My good, brave wife sat in the first compartment. Then came Franz, our youngest son, followed by Fritz, our oldest son. The center tubs contained our valuable cargo. Then came our third son, bold Jack, followed by Ernest, our intelligent but rather lazy second son. I stood in the stern, trying to guide the boat to a safe landing place. We had left the 2 large dogs, Turk and Juno, on the wreck. But when they saw us deserting them, they sprang into the sea after us. As we neared the shore, it appeared rocky and barren. The geese and ducks, however, found an opening between the rocks where a stream flowed into the sea. I steered after them, and we soon found ourselves in a small, calm bay. As soon as we could gather our children around us on dry land, we knelt in prayer. Then together we unloaded the boat and set up a tent. The younger boys quickly gathered moss and grass for beds. I made a fireplace with some large flat stones near the brook. Then my wife began making soup with the help of little Franz.
Mama, don't you want some beef?
He asked as she added water to the dried soup.
Where can I get it, dear?
She reminded him.
We're a long way from a butcher's shop.
Oh,
He said quietly. Meanwhile, Fritz climbed over the rocks to see what lay beyond the stream. That kind of brisk exercise didn't suit Ernest, so he wandered down to the beach. Jack scrambled among the rocks, searching for shellfish. I was eager to grab 2 casks that had been floating near our boat. While struggling to do that, I heard Jack cry out.
ah, help!
He screamed. Fearing he was in great danger, I ran and found him standing in a deep pool. A huge lobster had caught his leg in its powerful claw. Poor Jack was very frightened.
It won't let me go!
He cried. I grabbed the lobster firmly by the back, and it released its grip. Jack carried the lobster triumphantly to the tent. He urged his mother to add it to the soup, but she decided to save it for another meal. Congratulations, Jack, I said. You're the first to discover something useful.
I found something good to eat, too. Oysters,
said Ernest.
but I didn't want to get my feet wet, and I found sea salt in the crevices of the rocks.
Never let me hear you object to getting your feet wet, I said. See how quickly the sun has dried Jack and me? My wife stirred the soup with a stick.
Our soup is ready, but how will we eat it without bowls or spoons?
Oyster shells,
Ernest exclaimed. The boys ran off to get some oysters. By the time they came back, Fritz had also returned with reports of the beautiful country that lay beyond the stream. We ate the oysters and scooped up our soup with the shells. As the sun set, my wife pulled some oats from her mysterious bag and fed the poultry. Our first day ashore drew peacefully to a close. The Swiss Family Robinson, Chapter 3, Coconuts and Monkeys. The roosters woke me at daybreak, and I then woke my wife. In the quiet interval before the boys were up, we discussed our situation.
Do you think any sailors reached land?
She asked me. I don't know, but we need to find out, I replied. We also need to learn more about this place where we're stranded. We decided that Fritz and I would start on an expedition after breakfast. My wife would remain near our landing place with the other boys. After packing up some food and water, Fritz and I set out. We walked upstream until we reached a waterfall. Then we crossed the stream using several large rocks as stepping stones. On the other side of the stream was a field of tall grass. We had just begun to force our way through the grass when we heard a rustling sound. Turning around, we saw the grass waving as if some animal were passing through. Fritz brought his gun to his shoulder.
Turk!
Cried Fritz, lowering his gun as the dog approached. It's a good thing you didn't fire, I said. The three of us headed toward the beach to search for any sign of the sailors. We pushed on until we came to a grove of trees stretching down to the water's edge. 1,000 brightly colored birds twittered in the branches above. As we gazed up at them, Fritz stumbled over a round object on the ground.
This must be a bird's nest,
He said. Every round, hairy thing is not a bird's nest, I laughed. This is a coconut, and it should be full of delicious liquid. We split the coconut open, but found that it had dried up. Moving on, we came to some trees with strange bumps on their trunks. Those are calabash trees, I said, recognizing them from travel books. The bumps are gourds. The natives make bowls, spoons, and bottles from gourds, and even cooking vessels.
That's impossible.
Fritz pointed out.
A gourd would burn if it were set on the fire.
The natives don't set the gourd on the fire, I replied. They cut it in two and hollow it out. Then they fill it with water and food. Next they add red-hot stones until the water boils and the food is done.
How clever,
said Fritz. We cut some gourds and left them to pick up on our way home. For 3 hours we kept walking. At last we came to a piece of land that stretched into the sea. From its rocky summit I knew we could obtain a good view of the surrounding country. We reached the top with little difficulty. Before us stretched a wide and lovely bay, and the scene inland was no less beautiful. But both Fritz and I felt lonely as we realized we were the only people there. Cheer up, Fritz, I said. Remember that we chose a settler's life when we left Switzerland, although we didn't expect to be so utterly alone. We descended the hill and headed toward a clump of palm trees. But to reach them, we had to pass through a dense thicket of reeds. Fearing that we might encounter a snake, I broke off a reed for a weapon. I soon noticed liquid dripping from one end. When I tasted it, I realized the reeds were sugar canes. Fritz, we must cut some of these for Mother. We cut as many as we could carry and continued toward the palm trees. As we emerged from the sugarcane thicket, we spotted a troop of monkeys playing under the palm trees. They quickly climbed to the top of the trees. Monkeys are natural mimics, I said. Watch this. I gathered some stones and tossed them up toward the monkeys. They instantly seized all the coconuts within reach and tossed them down to us. Fritz was delighted with my trick and gathered up some of the finest coconuts. These were fresh, so I made some holes in the shells and we enjoyed the delicious liquid inside. Then I cut the coconuts in two and we ate the meat that lined their shells. It was now time to head home. We walked slowly with our load of sugar canes and coconuts. Turk bounded ahead of us and surprised another troop of monkeys playing on the ground. They all escaped except for a little one, who tried to hide in the grass. Fritz rushed to its rescue, flinging away all he was carrying and losing his hat in his haste. With one leap, the monkey was on his shoulders, holding tight to Fritz's thick, curly hair.
Help!
Cried Fritz as he tried to pull the creature off.
Help me, Father!